All right, guys, today I'm here with Owen Taylor, a licensed immigration and foreign investment lawyer, and we're going to be talking about how to avoid these common pitfalls, legal and immigration mistakes here in Colombia. So Owen, thanks again for being here. And yeah, let's just dive right in. So
thank you, Thomas. It's been a little while since I haven't seen you in person. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, here I am.
Absolutely.
City of Medellín. Yes, indeed. I'm a Colombian immigration and direct foreign investments attorney working in a boutique law firm, which is of my own, and helping the expats community here in Colombia. I've been practicing immigration laws in Colombia for the last 5 years altogether. And believe me, I've seen many people committing mistakes that end up in not having a visa approved, or in some cases even losing their investments as well, unfortunately.
Yes, so that's why we're going to do this short video explaining some of these things so you don't have to make those mistakes like so many of your clients may have.
That's correct. In good faith, they do it, but still, nonetheless, the government is not here to pamper anyone. That's for sure.
Yeah. So this is one that I'll just jump right in. We'll start with. This is something that I heard from a friend, that if you live with a Colombian, if let's say you're dating someone and they move into your apartment and they stay in your apartment for a certain amount of time, they automatically get marriage rights or legal rights to some degree, where now all of a sudden, even though you didn't get married, if you separate or whatever, there's a lot of consequences, I've heard, right? So
for sure. Do
you mind just sharing more about what we should know and things you can do to prevent if you get in a situation like that?
Oh, absolutely, Thomas. That's a really common one. Now, I like the way that you say that if someone is moving into your apartment, there could be consequences in the term. That used to be the case, but now the Constitutional Court, which is the equivalent to the Supreme Court in the United States, for example, has said that you don't even necessarily need to be living in the same space. But if you've been in public treating each other as if you were a true couple, it could bring legal consequences.
Really?
So it's not just a matter of living in the same space.
And how do they determine that? Because I haven't heard that one before.
All right. Now you're talking here of a little bit of family law. So what happened is, Colombian law says after 2 years living in the same space, sharing the same lifestyle, and publicly being presented as a true couple, after 2 years, it becomes what's called a de facto union, right? It's a civil union in Colombia, Unión Libre. A de facto union, it's equivalent to a marriage in Colombia. So after 2 years, presenting yourself as a couple to the public eye, in your Facebook account, to your friends and family, not necessarily living together. But if you do share, for example, your expenses, your bills, if you provide some cash to your partner or so on, or vice versa, then after 2 years together, it could definitely be considered by law as a de facto union, which is once again an equivalent to being married in Colombia. Hence, if you did not sign a prenups, thank you, sir. Yeah. Prenups, you could eventually end up in a legal turmoil, sharing your assets, your properties, your business.
Now, is those assets all international? Because if, let's say I have a bank account in the US or Canada and assets there, but I don't in Colombia, can they access those, or is that off the table?
That's a really good question. The theory, it says they do have access to that. Why? Because there is something called the exequatur, which is a process that if a Colombian judges on your favor, the judge also could request to another judge in the United States to make the Colombian judgment valid in the United States.
Okay.
It's difficult and it's expensive, but it's possible. So if you have a thorough, juicy investment or assets in Colombia and in the US, and the other person is willing to provide the attorneys and pay their legal fees, of course, they could chase you in the United States, Europe, wherever those assets are. Yeah.
So what can you do? Let's say you're going to move in with someone, but you don't want to make that commitment legally of being in a marriage, so to say. Can you do like a prenup like you suggested?
That's correct. That's correct. If you think the relationship is gonna go on a more mature way beyond 2 years, right? Because you start to feel in love, or You start to believe that's the right person. The best thing is talk to the person and do prenups. If you do prenups, you protect your assets. And those prenups also, potentially, if well done, professionally done, could also sort an effect in the United States. So you could protect not just your Colombian assets, your investments, corporations, or apartments in Colombia, or real estate in Colombia, but also whatever you have in the United States. Now, if you do want my best advice, do prenups in both countries, wherever your country of origin is, and in Colombia to protect your assets. But once again, if you do the Colombian ones the proper way, they are duly translated by an official translator to the language of your country of origin, and you obtain your apostille stamps, then also the Colombian prenups could sort an effect in your country of origin.
Okay. Yeah, so that's one a lot of people don't know about, that I've had a couple friends like share that with me, and I was surprised myself to hear about that.
Yeah, it's called a de facto union after 2 years being together with a Colombian citizen and showing up in public as a true couple and sharing all, not just your time, but all your finances and stuff to the public eye, not necessarily living together in the same apartment anymore.
So that's good to know. So that's the first mistake to avoid if you're coming, visiting, living in Colombia. Let's talk about some other common pitfalls that people aren't aware about or make assumptions that just aren't true.
One of the most common ones is when you request a visa, any visa type, business, real estate, marriages, no matter what. Student visa is the most common one. You are telling the government, I want you to give me a benefit. It's not a right that you can claim. It's a benefit. So basically, you're telling them a story and you're demonstrating your case through documents, and they'll give you a visa based on what you're telling the government. Say, I'm coming to study in Colombia. Here's my enrollment letter to a university to get my Spanish courses. Or here's my marriage document. And then they'll give you a visa. If your circumstances change after you have obtained a visa, you must report that to the visa authority. Because if the circumstances changes, for example, you are a student, you get a student visa, and then you don't go to school, it's called misrepresentation of the visa. Hence, the government will consider you have been in Colombia illegally ever since you knew the circumstances change, but you did not report that to them. For example, you get married with a Colombian citizen, you get your marriage visa. A month after you get the visa, you decide to divorce. Your visa is still valid, you decide to stay in Colombia, but you are divorced. You never reported that to the visa authority. It's considered you have been in Colombia illegally because you misrepresented the visa, because your marriage doesn't exist. Same with investors, which is mostly your clientele. Say you invest, you open up a corporation, the corporation fails, or you sell the investment for a profit, but you still stay with the visa in Colombia. You don't report that to the visa authority. It's being considered that you are illegal in Colombia from the moment you knew the change of circumstances, but you did not report that to the visa authority. So if you open up a business, if you incorporate yourself, and then you sell your business, or you decide to dissolve the corporation, for example, you cannot stay with the visa, because once the investments disappear, the visa goes away with it. Once you divorce, your visa goes away with your marriage. Once you go to, you get a student visa, you don't go to your classes, your visa goes away. But what happens is people don't realize it, and then they decide to apply to a different visa type. They most likely will be rejected because they misrepresented the prior visa. And usually, when you apply to a different visa type, you need to demonstrate how you ended up with your previous visa.
Got it. Okay. So it's really important then if you apply, if you, let's say, set up a business or go to school just to get the visa, but then kind of, don't do what the real intention is, and then you try to go back and get it.
Right, because you're telling the government a specific story and requesting a specific visa. And then another one is obtaining a visa. For example, the digital nomad visa, Colombian digital nomad visa is becoming very popular nowadays, but that visa is restricted. Basically, you can stay in Colombia for as long as the visa is approved for, but it doesn't have a work permit. So I've seen many people coming here, they obtain the digital nomad visa, they don't do a thorough investigation, so they think because they have a visa, they can work, but if they get you working, that's not just a misrepresentation of your visa, but also an illegal work that you're doing. So it could bring nefarious consequences to you.
Okay. And another one that I've heard is common that we were just talking about is the investor visa when you buy a property, right?
Yes.
So when you buy a property, there's a certain requirement. You have to pay a certain amount of money to qualify.
Correct.
But that minimum qualification changes year by year, right? It increases per se. So what I've heard is if you buy a property, and correct me on this if I'm wrong, if you buy a property at the minimum and then the next year or the following year, that minimum increases of what the requirement is, your visa may be at risk potentially.
Correct. That's correct. You're right. Here is the thing. It's not that the amount of money changes. What happens is Colombian laws says that the minimum value of a property, if you want to apply for a real estate investor visa, must be equal or more than 350 Colombian minimum wages per month. So the minimum wage changes every January 1st. Okay, so a minimum wage this year when you buy your property is not the same next year. So when you're going to renew your visa next year, if you just stick to the bare minimum, 350 Colombian wages, the Colombian salary increases between 5% to 12%, depending on inflation and negotiations, every year. So in 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, the registered value of the property is lower than 350 Colombian wages at today's price. So there is a lot of grace area right there. So what I thoroughly recommend to my clients is never stick to the minimum, which is 350 Colombian wages, minimum wages. Try to get at least 400 Colombian minimum wages. So you have enough room for the next 5 years to renew your visas until you become a permanent resident. In general terms, if you are not related to a Colombian citizen through marriage or being the father or mother of a Colombian citizen, you need to put in 5 years renewing your visas as a migrant in order to become a permanent resident. Once you become a permanent resident, you don't need investments anymore. You could just sell your properties or your business and then continue being a permanent resident. But before that, you need to renew your visas for 5 years. And that means anytime you apply for the visa, they're going to see what's the registered value of your property in the property title. And it must be equal or higher to 300, the equivalent to 350 Colombian minimum wages at the moment of the visa application, right? So this year, surprisingly, and I was talking to you about it behind the scenes, I've been able to get 2 cases approved of clients whose property value was below the equivalent at today's price of the Colombian minimum wage, but that still putting their visas at risk because immigration agents, they are discretionary. So some of them might be willing to help you out, understanding that the price of your property has increased in 3 years, even though the price is not registered on the property title, the new price, the increased value. So they still approve your visas, but it's still a risk. I would say don't do it. Buy something or invest in something that costs at least 400 Colombian minimum wages in value, which is around 140,000 US dollars at today's currency exchange in 2025, May 2025. So you give yourself room to renew your visas without stress for 5 years and then become a permanent resident. Once you become a permanent resident, the value of the property doesn't matter. And once again, you can even sell it if you don't want it or if you want to get a profit, and you still keep your resident status.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's super good to know because people that are doing that, you invest that amount of money and then you did it because you wanted the visa and now.
Right. If the immigration, if the value of the property is below 350 Colombian wages and the immigration officer, the visa officer doesn't approve you the visa, what do? I mean, you have an apartment where you cannot live because you don't have a visa, so you cannot stay unless you decide to stay illegally or become a tourist. But it's a big risk having an investment in Colombia and not being able to obtain a visa to either profit out of it or live in it.
This one I don't know too much about, so I'd love to just ask you. I've heard that there is some sort of law here. If you have a lease that you need to give a minimum 3 month or something to that effect notice to the landlord, which was something that I coming from the US, unless it's in the contract, you don't have to
avoid
do that.
penalties. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, something to that effect. And I've heard that even if it's not in the contract of the lease,
it's a law.
You still have to give them 3 months of notice that you're gonna not be continuing the lease. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so that one shocked me because they don't have it in the contract. You're not really told about it. But then if you decide that you want to leave, you have to continue to pay additional months even if you're not staying there type of thing?
You got to pay a penalties depending on, it's usually, depends on the contract as well, but usually the equivalent to 3 months. And in some contracts, actually, even though if you do give the 3 months notice, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to pay any penalties. That means there is no continuation of the contract, but there is still a penalty in it.
Really? Mm-hmm. I guess the summary of this video is make sure you work with people who know the law.
That's correct.
That are aware of these different pitfalls. And I'm sure there's many more that we didn't get to cover on this video. But Owen, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And if anyone wants to get in contact with you, again, you're immigration licensed lawyer here, specializing in immigration and foreign investment. So if there's anyone coming to Colombia, you want to connect with someone who has that expertise, where can they find you and contact you?
That would be very easy. OwenTaylorLaw.com. OwenTaylorLaw.com is my website. Owen@OwenTaylorAttorney is my email. And if you are a member of Thomas Group, he can always know where to find me.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Thank you.